didn't know much about the sex world?
But not even the sex world. I think I read this amazing research paper just as I was starting on the idea, and it's like the societal script for sex is very focused on men. It's focused on penetration, and there's no focus on women like owning their sexuality or enjoying sex. And then when it comes to orgasms, there's a massive gap between heterosexual couples from men and women experiencing orgasms because it's focused on, again, penetrative sex and not clitoral sex. So there's just so much research there. And I think as women, we don't even realize we're not having the most pleasurable experiences, that it just, we don't talk about it. And then, yeah, I grew up, you know, we never talked about sex at home. Also Christian, I'm still a Christian, and just never really, you speak about it with friends, like, oh yeah, I had sex with this person, but you never talk about your actual experience. So I think, yeah, it's been that whole journey.
What's your background? Just for everyone to know.
So I was born in Zimbabwe and then moved to the UK when I was 5, grew up in England, and then moved to Switzerland when I was 14. So I've had a very like third culture kid experience. My family's lived in Switzerland the last 20 years, and then I came back to the UK for university. Lived in Shanghai for a year, and then, yeah, have like lived in London now the last 11 years. Spent my whole career in investment banking and was at Morgan Stanley right till I was a VP and left in 2022 to build an impact-focused business that like helped women.
Did you leave investment banking because you wanted to do something else, or because you felt very strongly about this particular industry and making an impact on that?
Not bad. So I made VP when I was 30, and I honestly say this all the time. I'm like, I remember when I was like, if I can make VP in something, it's so terrible to say that I don't give a shit about. Imagine if I like actually followed my passion, which is like, I love women. I've always loved women, always championed like gender, diversity and equality. And I've always wanted to just do something that impacts people's lives. So I quit Morgan Stanley, not with this idea at all.
At all? You just quit because you wanted to do something on your own?
Yeah, I wanted to do something on my own, but I always knew it was going to be focused on women. And then, yeah, quit for that reason, to be honest. I had no idea what I was going to do. So
how did you land on this industry? Obviously, you were curious. Oh, we're gonna cut them in this like kind of like a thin, not that thin, like 2 inch. Is this 2 inch? You must be an expert in inches.
I'm not an expert in penises, just in orgasms.
Just orgasms. Okay, we'll get to that.
We don't need them for, you know, but anyway. More on that later.
More on that for sure. In like a minute.
How did you think about sex? Did you talk about it growing up?
No. I am from a very traditional background, traditional family. I'm from Georgia, where we don't, you know, I never grew up talking about anything about sex because you don't have sex before marriage, or at least you did not at that time when I was growing up there. So I literally was pretty clueless. I didn't even know when I first got my period.
That's insane.
I thought I was dying.
Oh, wow.
I was like, I'm bleeding. What is happening, Mom? And she was like getting her nails done, and she was just like, I'm going to be home in a minute. And so I kind of maybe had a clue, but like not really.
Yeah.
And so I was just waiting for her on the toilet for like an hour, not getting up, because I was like, I'm going to just have a mess everywhere. And I mean, I don't know. It was just, I didn't know what to expect. But more so in terms of just sex, yes. Nothing, and actually even more so nothing about the pleasure and how you can take care of yourself, but also being able to communicate what do you like to your partner, but then how do you communicate that without actually knowing it yourself?
Yeah.
And I think like that's a quite big aspect also of your, you know, philosophy, business, the view, right?
No,
it's like know yourself.
Exactly.
And don't be dependent on others for your own pleasure.
Yeah, no, it's I think that's so many women's experiences. Like, yeah, as I said to you, never spoke about sex. like especially in Christianity, as you said, you're not allowed to have sex before marriage and all those things. And then one interesting point that's come up in our research is, like most women's sexual experiences are with someone else versus men's first sexual experiences or first sexual
With
experiences
themselves.
with themselves. So like women never, ever really have that opportunity to get to know themselves, as you say.
And actually, I remember, not very recently, but seeing the stat where an overwhelmingly high amount of people, it was something like over 70%, a high amount of women in particular, never experience orgasm through penetration.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Is that
No, that's
that
true,
accurate?
exactly. Most women experience orgasms through clitoral stimulation. But it's the point that like historically, when there's been research, like the clitoris was only, like its sole function is for pleasure. And it was only put into like, what's it called, anatomy books in the early 90s. So there just hasn't been enough research. And then they've said, women who aren't having orgasms from penetrative sex historically is because there's something wrong with them, rather than they're actually, the realization is most women have orgasms from clitoral stimulation. So it's that education piece that's lacking for us as women as society. As I said to you, like our culture is based sex as penetration. Sex does not equal penetration, but that's what we've been like fed.
Yeah.
So then if you're having penetrative sex and not having an orgasm, you think there's something wrong with you, but actually you haven't figured out what works for you. Women's health in general, you're seeing like a massive focus on it now. I always laugh because I saw an ad that's like, women's health has been left out the discussion for far too long.
Yeah.
So the company who had the ad, it's like, you decide what type of health you focus on.
Right.
So it's a massive focus on women's health, on like understanding fertility, menstruation, like all the diseases that impact women specifically, because our data has not been represented in like healthcare. So then when you think about sex data, that's like even more taboo. So there's like very little research, very little information when it comes to sexual health. And the problem that we're trying to solve is that like 50% of women in Britain suffer from sexual problems, and that's like...
Is that so?
So for us, when we read that data point that like 50% of women suffer from sexual problems, we wanted to speak to women to really understand and see if that's an actual issue. So yeah, we spoke to over 400 women through like user interviews, anonymous surveys, all of that, and like that's what came back, like people having painful sex and it's normal. People don't know how to have an orgasm, or if they've had one before, they don't know how to make them better, they don't know how it feels. Like there's just so many issues, like why is my libido lower now that I'm on contraception? Like there's so many issues that people are having within their sex lives that just go unnoticed.
Okay, so I'm gonna actually blend now these walnuts so we can make a paste out of it.
Yum.
While I do that, you will be getting slowly started with frying our eggplants.
Okay.
So I covered it with salt so you can sweat out the bitterness out of eggplants.
Perfect.
You might want to tie your hair up for this messy
Very good idea.
task. Let me just... Oh, why is this not... Oh, is it not on? What is happening? Okay, let's see. Okay. Oh. We want them pretty fine.
Okay, perfect. I have nothing to shake, so I can't match you. Just pretend to shake on the side.
Let's shake it up, boom, boom, boom. So, please.
What type of paste are we making, by the way?
So it's walnut with Georgian spices. So fenugreek and marigold.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of that?
No, never.
There you
and
go.
is this like a typical traditional Georgian meal?
Yeah, we use a lot. Dish, yes, for sure. We'll use a lot of these spices actually in Georgian cooking, and they're delicious. So, if you want to get started with patting these down,
on both sides,
on just one side, and then you have the oil here, and you can start frying up our eggplants.
And how do you want them fried?
Golden.
Okay.
Just like you. Golden.
Thank you.
Golden. So, you guys did some really amazing research. Tell tell me all about it? What was the research about and what was the findings of it?
Yeah, no, so the starting point, as I said, was that data point of 50% of women having sexual problems. And we wanted to validate that. Like, do women today feel this way? So we ended up speaking to over 400 women.
That's a huge size, because what I've found out recently is that a lot of the even large companies who do this market research,
people.
they do like minimum. I heard it is 50, and they do like maybe 60 sometimes.
Like
out
one
of
in five experience this, and they spoke to 50.
So you guys had a huge sample size, which is amazing.
It was crazy because the first one that we did was anonymous survey, and just like writing to so many people in my network, like, hey, starting this business, focus on female pleasure. Can you get people to answer? I'm so happy we did it anonymous, because obviously people have never really been asked these questions before.